After filing for bankruptcy for a second time in 7 years, jewelry retailer Claire's gets a lifeline. ABC's Jacqueline Lee has details.
It looked like more than 1,400 stores would close across the country. But we have some good news. The company has entered into an agreement with a buyer who is an affiliate of Ames Watson, a private holding company that will keep as many as 950 U.S. stores open. This move also preserves thousands of jobs that would have been lost.
Friday marks 2 weeks since the attack on the Centers for Disease Control in Atlanta that killed a police officer. ABC's Brian Clark has details on some new security measures.
Some CDC leadership has returned to headquarters in Atlanta, according to an internal letter obtained by ABC News. Repair work is underway at the two buildings most affected by the attack, and CDC leadership's informed employees extra security has been added to campuses. CDC staffers who are planning to attend Friday's memorial for DeKalb police officer David Rose were advised not to wear anything that could identify them as a CDC employee. Brian Clark, ABC News.
Russia launching a massive attack on Ukraine. Officials in Kyiv reporting a barrage of more than 600 drones and ballistic missiles launched toward western Ukraine. An exact death toll has yet to be reported, but several dozen are injured. President Volodymyr Zelensky saying that, quote, it seems like there's no effort for Russia to stop this war. Dave Packer, ABC News.
He's coming. Here he goes.
Surprise! Your table saw broke. Also, the warranty expired weeks ago, so you need to pay for a new one out of pocket.
At Progressive, we know small business owners don't usually like surprises because they cost you money. But a good surprise that could save you money? Getting a commercial auto quote from Progressive.
Oh, and the replacement part you ordered doesn't fit, so it's completely useless.
What a waste.
Surprise yourself. See if you can save in as little as 8 minutes at ProgressiveCommercial.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates.
News Talk 610 AM and 102.1 FM. KVNU.
It's now 5:05 on this Thursday afternoon, and with your KVNU News headlines, I'm Will Feelright. Well, health officials here in Cache County are reporting a rapid rise in confirmed cases of E. coli infections, and that's prompting a public warning for residents to take precautions. Now, the Bear River Health Department says that while some E. coli cases are expected each summer, a recent spike in the past week is concerning. Now, E. coli is a bacteria that lives in the intestines of humans and animals and is often linked to contaminated food or contact with animals. Now, with local fairs, farmers markets, and other community events taking place, the health department is encouraging families to practice good hygiene. They advise supervising children in animal exhibit areas and ensuring that hands are washed after visiting barns or animal pens. They're also recommending to keep food and drinks away from those areas. Now, symptoms of an E. coli infection, which can be severe, may appear often within 2 to 10 days of exposure. Now, the health department reminds residents to thoroughly wash hands with soap and water after using the restroom, changing diapers, or handling animals, and before preparing or eating any food. They also advise cooking meat to safe internal temperatures and washing produce well before eating it. Well, the criminal justice leaders, that is, in Utah are now considering expanding risk assessments in domestic violence cases. It's a discussion that has gained new urgency after the recent killings of 2 police officers Sunday night. Now, the proposed changes would expand the current lethality assessment. It's a tool that police officers use to determine a victim's danger level. Now, according to Captain Tanner Jensen with the Utah Department of Public Safety, the state is now evaluating ways to also assess the aggressor in a domestic violence situation. Now, the discussions were in motion even before the deaths of Tremonton Police Sergeant Lee Sorensen and Officer Eric Estrada, who were killed by a domestic violence suspect. And the mission president for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has been released from a hospital in Mexico City just 4 days after he was shot by an intruder. Now, a church spokesperson, Sam Penrod, confirmed yesterday that President R. Tyler Wallace, a 56-year-old, was out of the hospital and continuing to recuperate from his injuries. Now, the incident occurred back early Saturday morning at about 2 a.m. when an intruder broke into the mission home during what police believe was an attempted robbery. Now, Wallace was shot once and was taken to an immediate care unit in Mexico City, where he was in stable condition and responding well to treatment. His wife, Elizabeth Wallace, meanwhile, was also in the home but not injured by the intruder. Now, Penrod released a statement from the Wallaces saying that, quote, President and Sister Wallace expressed sincere gratitude for the prayers offered in their behalf, and they look forward to continuing their service as mission leaders, end of quote. Now, the couple, who are from Orlando, Florida, began their mission service back in July there in Mexico. Now, the church is reportedly cooperating with local authorities as they continue to investigate the incident. Well, going to continue to see cloudy skies. Some isolated showers expected to continue through the rest of the day today as it's kept temperatures cooler. Now, tonight will drop into the mid to high 50s. And then more chances of some isolated showers, thunderstorms possible for tomorrow, as we're going to finish off the weekend with some cloudy skies. The sun will start to break through on Saturday, though, and we'll see temperatures getting back into the low 90s. But Sunday into the first of next week calls for more showers and cooler temperatures. And weather this hour brought to you by Mountain Valley Heating and Air Conditioning. You still have time to nominate a family for a free furnace and air conditioning unit installed in their home. Just go to mountainvalleyhvac.com to nominate a family. You have until August 31st. And I'm Will Feelright with your KVNU News headlines.
For over a decade, Roof Rescue has been safeguarding your homes with the finest roofing solutions. We understand the value of your time. That's why we're committed to replacing most roofs in just one day. With award-winning service, 100% guaranteed workmanship, and the best warranties in the industry, your watertight peace of mind is guaranteed. Call us today at 435-999-4268 or visit roofrescueusa.com and ask for the $250 off any roof replacement. Financing available? That's roofrescueusa.com.
The local news source. News Talk KVNU 610 AM and 102.1 FM.
Have no fear. Dollar Loan Center and Don'tBeBroke.com are finally here with 3 new locations, and it was worth the wait. There are payday and title loan companies everywhere and a bank or credit union on nearly every corner. Here's the problem. Banks stopped lending money years ago, and the other joints cost a fortune. We're proud to announce that we're now open in Logan on Highway 89 near Walmart and in Ogden on 12th Street and Lincoln Avenue. We lend up to $5,000 in minutes. You don't need a checking account, great credit, or collateral. It costs nothing to find out how much you can borrow and get your first loan. The first week of interest is even on us, and there's no application fees. Really, we're normally half the cost of the competition and guarantee to beat their rates. Stop by one of our new locations, or you can even apply and get funded online at Don'tBeBroke.com.
License by the Utah Department of Financial Institutions. Subject to approval, limitations may apply. See website for details.
Glenn Beck.
When I was a kid, going to the moon was a really big deal. But by the time I was like in, 4th grade, even we were watching it in school and the teachers were like, yeah, same stuff. They're playing golf now. Look at how things have changed. It still felt like things were hard and some things might be impossible. But now, the possible is just overdue. It's like, why haven't we? It hasn't arrived yet? What's the problem here? What are we waiting for?
The Glenn Beck Program.
Sunday afternoons from 2 to 5 on News Talk KVNU.
Another night slowly closes in, and I feel so lonely. Touching heat, freezing on my skin. I pretend you still hold me. I'm going crazy, I'm losing sleep. I'm empty, farming way too deep over you. I can't believe you're gone. You were the first, you'll be the last. Wherever you go, I
Utah works. What comes from the legislature, what comes from our local communities, and how we bring those all together to make sure we're meeting the needs of students. But before we jump into that, could I give just a couple of kind of start of school invitations and stuff to the audience?
Sure.
Okay, first thing, we are so thrilled to have students back in school. It's been a fantastic day. Our teachers for the last 2 days have just done a phenomenal job, and our kids have been great. I was out at the high school, and I got to go to Wilson Elementary, and we had administrators at every school just kind of helping out and watching. It really was just a fantastic day. A couple of reminders to all of you out there. As you come up on schools, please be aware of school zones and the need to slow down and drive carefully there. And also watch out for crossing guards. We have a number of crossing guards who aren't in school zones. They're a little bit further away to make sure that kids have safe walking routes. And some of them are on very busy roads that have a lot of traffic. 10th West and Logan is one example. As you're driving on those roads, please recognize if you're coming to an intersection, there's a good chance that you're going to see a crossing guard and potentially some students. So please follow the speed limit, slow down, be aware, because we want to make sure that we avoid any potential challenges there with our students as they're walking to school.
Sure.
And the second thing for parents, the start of school, just like it's a reestablishment of routines for parents and their children, it's a reestablishment of routines for schools. And sometimes we hit snags. There were some communication snags we just had yesterday with bus pickup and bus stops. Please just keep open lines of communication with your school. And if you run into challenges, let us know. We'll take care of it as quickly as we can. We want to make sure we're supportive and we're collaborating and taking care of things. But we know that especially if we're dealing with new systems or some new expectations, snags occasionally pop up, and we appreciate your help and your patience as we work through those.
As a child who was a walking communication issue,
yeah.
I honestly have to look, and it is amazing that if you think about this, you're going from summer break to the rules and constriction, if you will, of the classroom for a lot of these kids. It's amazing things go as well as they do in the first week. So I don't think anyone should be faulted for any little mishaps that might happen here and there in the first couple of days, because it really is amazing that schools can pull this off every year, coming out of that summer break into the classroom.
One of the things I loved as a principal, especially as an elementary school principal, is you do get kids who generally have come from a summer of very little structure, and in 90 seconds they come in the building and they're actively engaged in a class activity. They're participating in the class, and the teachers are flexible and they respond to needs. Like I said, I was at Wilson. We had a second grade class where I had a poor little friend who was just a little bit nervous about the first day of school, and within the first 5 minutes, that had shown up by them throwing up on the floor. So the custodian goes in there to clean that up, and the teacher just takes the class on a walking field trip of the school. And when I walked by, they were sitting on the floor outside one of the bathrooms, and this teacher was reviewing bathroom expectations with these kids, how we wash our hands, why we need to do that. So everybody responds to whatever's in front of them, and the students are smiling, and they're happy to be there with their teachers, and the teachers just love them and give them an environment that helps them feel connected. I watched high school teachers creating activities that were designed to help students immediately build connections with one another and build connections as a class, which, of course, the more connected we feel, the more we feel we belong, the more successful we are in our learning. And I watched, just a whole bunch of teachers spend that first day creating that environment, which is one of the best things about the first day of school. It's awesome to see.
That's a skill to be able to roll. Because most of us, if you think about this, if you're standing there and there's a group of children and one of them throws up on the floor, your first reaction is not going to be just a kind of a calm act. And I've seen teachers do this where they just sort of, it's almost like they didn't see it. They obviously did. Sort of like they didn't see it, and they just take everyone's attention over here instead. And it really is a skill that many teachers take to an art form. But yeah, it does go back to really something that deserves a moment of recognition, that being able, as a district, as a specific school, in a classroom with a single teacher, to be able to transition out of the fun, a lot of times very free summer break and into the more strict environment of a classroom. It's fascinating that it happens even each year. So, and I mentioned to you, Frank, we did have a listener want us to throw this little reminder out, which is a good idea, but it does take a little getting used to for all of us who commute daily. But remember, the crossing guards are out there. The kids are going to be in those intersections again. There have already been a few close calls here in Cache Valley just in the last a couple of days. So just keep an eye out and respect those school zone speed limits. Watch for the kids, especially in a lot of those residential areas. Yeah. It's going to be an increasing thing as the valley grows. But just a little transition. So, all right. In the studio with us today, again, for our spotlight on Logan Schools, we have not only Superintendent of Logan Schools, Frank Schofield, but also here in the studio with us, we have the guy who keeps an eye on all the money. And I have to mention this because this is just kind of a funny little way to start things out here. But Jeff, I looked you up just to do a little research before the hour, and I found an article, local media organization reporting on the new person at Logan School District, and I was reading through that, and I'm like, oh, he's new. And then I looked at the date, 2014. You've been doing this a while. Yeah. We'll talk more with both Jeff and Frank here in the studio as our spotlight on Logan Schools continues right after this.
I'm Larry Gelwigs, the getaway guru for Morris, Columbus Travel and Celebrity Cruises, with the biggest cruise promotion of the year, with huge discounts off your cruise fare and free amenities. Sail the 7 seas in luxury with Celebrity Cruises and Morris Columbus Travel. And for the best travel deals on the planet, give us a call at Morris Columbus Travel.
Come on and get away, Morris Columbus.
Hi, this is Gordon Deal. Friday on This Morning, America's First News. The relationship between President Trump and European leaders has improved. Hear how they've learned to speak Trump's language. Also, where are the working moms? New stats indicate they're leaving the workforce in large numbers this year. We'll examine the reasons why. And how to better remember people's names from networking events. Friday on This Morning, America's First News. From 4 to 6 on News Talk KVNU, 610 AM and 102 FM. Your station for news and talk.
Welcome back to KVNU's For the People. It is our spotlight on Logan Schools. Every month we get a chance to sit down with Superintendent Frank Schofield and guests as we have gone through. Man, I was thinking about this. We have done everything from some of the sort of extracurricular programs that are there for even parents and families that may be struggling with certain issues at home that the school district can help with, to hours that we've done where we talked about, science and social media in the classroom. And we've really covered so much of what a school district and what classrooms are all about. Today, though, we get to do something that we actually haven't talked about at all before, which is the business side of this. When it comes to the business side of a school district or a specific school, you have a lot of different players. You, of course, have the immediate management of the school or the district, but you also have the legislature kind of sticking their nose in every chance they get. You also have, certain county or even city representatives who are involved in certain discussions and decisions. And so it's a very complex machine, but it does still have to run with, balance sheets and transparency for where the money came from and where it went and things like that. So there is a business administration side of this. And joining today alongside Superintendent Frank Schofield, we have Jeff Barber, the business administrator for Logan School District. And I joked again that you were new, but 11 years here, and a lot before that. What's that like to watch, over a district in this capacity and see how much? I assume things have changed quite a bit in just the 11 years you've been with Logan Schools.
Yeah.
It's got to be an interesting thing to see.
Yeah. The legislature throws changes at us every year, and so
that's a nice way to put it.
To those. We just have to figure out how that's gonna work for our district, and how that's gonna shake down, and where that's gonna go. And so, it really is. There are a lot of different things that the state wants us to do, and they bring those in, and we also have federal regulations that we need to abide by, and then we also want to make sure that we respond to the needs and the desires of our local community. And so putting all those things together can sometimes be a little bit challenging, but that's what we're here for.
And I would assume, Jeff, you, Frank, and others have, regular meetings where you're kind of sitting around, maybe around a specific, maybe around a more broad question, trying to answer the question of like, okay, is the money going to the right places? Are we doing the most effective thing with money? Realizing it's always going to be finite and always not going to be enough, probably, I think is a fair thing to say here in Utah at least. But that has to be a frequent conversation, right?
Right. And with the superintendent and the board, the board sets the direction, and so we typically will put together options and let the board look at where they want and ask the board where their priorities are, where we want that. Typically their priority is our teachers and our employees. They want to make sure that they're taken care of financially. That's always seemed to be where our board, at least in Logan, is focused on saying, how do we maximize the amount of funding that we can offer to our teachers and our employees. That's where they want that focus to be, because that's where you have the greatest impact on student learning.
Sure. Makes sense. This is a time when there isn't a school probably in the country. There definitely is one in Utah where, schools and entire districts are trying to do as much as they can with, I joke about it not being enough, and it really probably could never be enough. But here in Utah, we are one of the on the lower end of the spectrum, to put it nicely, when it comes to education funding per district. And so that does require some creativity, but that also means that there is a constant assessment of the money that's not only going out, what it's being spent on, but the money coming in as well. And listeners may have seen this, CacheValleyDaily.com. I saw it in the Herald Journal today as well. But the Cache County School District is at the heart of this discussion. But it's a truth in taxation public hearing legally required by the state that follows one that took place in Box Elder County, which I'd forgotten about until you reminded me, Frank. But there is a proposed property tax increase, 28% in the case of the Cache County School District. And keep in mind, when it comes to property taxes, this is not, we're not talking to your entire property tax bill. This is the school district's portion. And there are, also other players that make up that entire bill you get every year. But truth in taxation hearing required by state law. And the school districts then have to go out and kind of explain this, right? And say, here's why. And this is never really popular, but it's necessary.
Yeah, and there are a lot of reasons why a district might go to truth in taxation. We just a couple years ago we did truth in taxation, and it really wasn't to raise taxes. What we did is we shifted money that was in our debt service fund, which is what we use to pay off bonds, and we shifted a portion of that into our capital levy. And the reason for that is if we can raise funds through our ongoing capital levy, we can actually limit the amount of money we have to generate through purchasing bonds in the future. Mm-hmm. So when we have future building projects, if we can generate funds through a small ongoing shift in our capital levy, then we don't have to ask the community to take on the burden of a bond, which lasts 15 years or so, to pay off. So because that was a shift in the percentages that were going to each of those levies, we had to go to truth in taxation. it wasn't really an overall increase in taxes.
Sure.
But we were shifting
any change
where the money was flowing, so we had to do that. Other times districts will say we need to generate some additional money. Other times we go to truth in taxation because in order to maximize the revenue that we can get from the state, we have to be taxing at a certain rate. And because our tax rates drop automatically as property values go up, as we see property values increase and tax rates, drop correspondingly, you reach a point as a school district where in order to keep the funding coming to you from the state that you've been needing, you have to vote and raise that tax rate to hit that base level that the state requires.
Sure.
So there are a lot of reasons why we might go to truth in taxation that either have to do with shifting where pots of money are being used to maximize their impact on the district, or generate more revenue to address additional new needs, or just to maintain the revenue that's been coming in so we can continue to provide the services that we have been providing to students and their families. And as Jeff mentioned, our top priority has historically been, let's make sure that we're compensating our teachers and principals and our staff in a way that lets us keep high quality people, for the long term.
Sure.
Because of the impact they have on their students.
That is, and interestingly enough, this is actually the Cache County Treasurer a few years ago on our show did this amazing job of explaining this. Maybe we should get him in to do that again. But few people understand, we all understand the words increase or a dollar amount or things like that, but few people understand what we're talking about when terms are being thrown around like certified overall rate and things like that, or as was discussed during a legislative interim committee hearing yesterday on the same topic, they kept using the word non-compliance, saying that we have these districts that are in, quote, non-compliance, and the state has noticed, and so the state is basically forcing these proposed increased levies of property tax. But few people understand that interrelated, that equation, if you will, that works where, as you said, Frank, it's a situation where the state funding will decrease if a higher property tax is not proposed. And for a lot of people, they hear that and think, what?
Right. Yeah, the state has state guaranteed money, and they have equalization money that's tied to, and basically they didn't want to give that out just to anybody. They said, look, there needs to be some local effort in this as well, because some districts were taxing at a higher rate than others, and so they said, in fairness, if your tax is below the minimum rate to qualify for that guarantee, then you'll need to, if you want to qualify for that guarantee, then you'll need to bring your tax rates up. And so, in some cases the board can do that. In some cases it's the public that needs to do that. And there are different levies that, that the school district has. We have a board levy that the board can raise, but there's also a voted levy. And the public needs to, they set the rate that the board can set that voted levy rate at. And so there's, it can be complicated, but it does. Basically, what we're trying to do is generate the same amount of money every year. And so, again, as home values go up and property values go up, then that rate goes down to bring in about the same amount of revenue. Now, sometimes with new growth and some other things, we generate some additional revenue beyond that. But that's really, when they certify the rate, the county looks at the valuation, and then they say, okay, this rate will bring, the values have gone up by this much, and so this is the new rate that's going to bring in that same amount of money, and that's what they call certification. They certify that rate and say, this is the certified rate. And so you can accept the certified rate, which is what we did this year. We just said, yeah, we'll just accept the certified rate and bring in the same amount of money that we did last year. Or if, for the reasons that the superintendent talked about, if you need to increase the revenue that's coming in, then you have to go to truth in taxation in order to raise that rate and generate additional revenue.
And that is, and it's also important for folks to understand that from the state's perspective, we're talking state lawmakers, the legislature, from their perspective, they're looking at this as everyone needs to be kicking in, because we're going to take all that money and kind of redistribute it throughout the state equitably to all of the districts. And so they're looking at it as from an equity point of view, kind of. And then locally, they're forcing the districts to do all of the hard work, to go out and explain it to people, to take the lumps if people aren't happy. And then, of course, the transparency issue is important here as well, with the truth in taxation. But Jeff, I appreciate that. That is one of the most concise explanations I've heard. And if you're out there listening and you're confused by this, don't at all feel alone in that. It's a complex system, again, with a lot of different players and decision makers involved. But an attempt, at least, to make it make sense there. We're talking again with Superintendent of Logan Schools, Frank Schofield, and longtime business administrator for the Logan School District. Here in the studio with us, Jeff Barber. And please, if you're able to, stick around. We have more to come after this look at the news with KVNU's Will Feel Right.
Well, thank you, Jason. A 44-year-old Smithfield man is now facing a charge of homicide after allegedly hitting a pedestrian in a Logan parking lot while drunk Saturday night. The victim sustained critical injuries and later passed away. Now, according to court records, Chad Saunders was arraigned on Monday in Logan's 1st District Court. He was charged with automobile homicide, a second-degree felony, after initially being charged with negligently operating a vehicle resulting in injury, but the charge was amended after the victim passed away. Now, according to an affidavit of probable cause, Logan City police officers arrived at the scene after receiving reports of the auto-pedestrian crash. They transported the victim to the hospital by an ambulance. The victim was later flown to a trauma center where medical staff had said she was in critical condition with serious head trauma. Now, Logan police identified the driver as Saunders and then let him leave the scene without conducting a field sobriety test. Now, officers later called him and he agreed to a blood draw. Now, an officer said they immediately noticed the heavy odor of alcohol on his breath. The officer also wrote in the probable cause statement that Saunders spontaneously admitted to drinking heavily that night. Now, Saunders' father confirmed that Saunders did not consume any additional alcohol after leaving the scene. Officers believed also that Saunders was a flight risk because he was from Oregon and was planning to move out of state. Now, he's being held in the Cache County Jail without bail and is scheduled to appear again in court coming up next week. Well, the Box Elder County Fair Parade began with a solemn tribute yesterday afternoon as the community honored 2 police officers killed in the line of duty. Sergeant Lee Sorensen and Officer Eric Estrada were remembered with a moment of silence and 2 riderless horses, which were led by Sorensen's children. Now, residents along the parade route saluted, clapped, and placed hands over their hearts as a mark of respect. Now, the deaths of the 2 officers have deeply impacted northern Utah, which has since rallied to support their families and each other. Now, according to residents, the parade, which is a long-standing tradition in Box Elder County, provided a moment for the community to come together and find strength during this emotional time. And a Cache Valley man is auctioning off his family's rare first edition copy of the Book of Mormon. Richard Hatch of Providence said that the 1830 edition was originally purchased by his grandfather back in 1953 for $100 to $150. Now, according to Hatch, first editions are now selling for well over $100,000. The book is being sold by an auction house coming up on September 4th. Now, the book has been held in a deposit box at a Logan bank for more than 40 years, and Hatch said that his siblings recently agreed to sell it to let someone else who appreciates the historical document have it. Now, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints reports the Book of Mormon was first published in Palmyra, New York, back in March of 1830. Of the original 5,000 copies printed, an estimated 700 are believed to be in existence today. Now, the book is considered as important as the Bible to members of the faith. The auction is also including a first European edition of the Book of Mormon and also a complete bound file of what's known as Orson Pratt's The Seer. Now, according to Hatch, the Book of Mormon is the leading item in the auction's catalog. So far, the current highest bidder is $82,000. Well, we've had a little bit of rain today, not much, but first time we've had any moisture here at the Radio Ranch since the 4th of July. If you can believe that, 48 days. Now, we will see a chance of showers again tomorrow with some clouds, some isolated thunderstorms possible. And then heading into the weekend, sunny skies on Saturday, chance of showers returning on Sunday. And it looks like that chance of rain will continue into the first of next week and start to bring us some cooler temperatures. And weather this hour brought to you by Edson Builders. You know, whether you're building on a budget or building your forever home, they promise a higher quality and a better building experience. It's Edson Builders. Give them a call today at 232-2680. And I'm Will Feelright with your KVNU News headlines.
ABC News, I'm Dave Packard. President Trump visited a few hundred officers at the U.S. Park Anacostia Operations Facility in southeast Washington, D.C.
Well, I just want to thank everybody very much for being here. I wanted to do this. We've had some incredible results. The results have come out, and it's like a different place. It's like a different city. It's the capital. It's going to be the best in the world.
The president ordered the federal government to take control of the city's police department earlier this month. 36 years after murdering their parents, the Menendez brothers making their case for freedom. Eric Menendez appearing before California's parole board to convince officials he and his brother Lyle don't pose an unreasonable risk to society. Lyle will appear before the parole board tomorrow. Hurricane Erin is on the move, conditions worsening as the storm moves up the East Coast. Strong winds and dangerous waves slamming beaches from the Outer Banks to Cape Cod. This is ABC News.
Summer has been rough with insects taking over. Grasshoppers have come in like a wrecking ball, eating our gardens, bushes, and flower beds. Logan Extermination can help with a spray and bait treatment that will help eradicate those hoppers. Earwigs and wasps are also starting to make their mark, while spiders are letting us know that winter is near and they're already trying to move inside. Call Logan Extermination today to schedule your insect treatment and protect your home and property. Logan Extermination, 752-8450. It's here, the Discount Tire and Automotive 49th Anniversary Sale. Buy any 4 tires. You heard right, any 4 tires and get a free 4-wheel alignment. That's a $129.99 value. Yours completely free. That's right, a free alignment just for buying tires. No strings, no catch, plus save big on top tire brands or choose our quality budget options. At Discount Tire and Automotive, you'll always get the guaranteed lowest price, in-store or online. And right now, that includes a free alignment with any 4-tire purchase. Need flexible payments? Take 12-month no interest, no credit check financing, or layaway. You won't find a better deal online or in store. Guaranteed. Celebrate 49 years of savings at Discount Tire and Automotive. Book now at webtires.net or stop by and claim your free alignment today with 3 convenient locations in Logan, Providence, and Smithfield.
Discount Tire. So much more than a tire store.
Friday Night Lights are back, and so is the best high school sports coverage in northern Utah. From Ridgeline to Bear River, Green Canyon to Logan, Skyview to Mountain Crest, Cache Valley Media Group brings fans full play-by-play action on the radio and video all season long. It's going to be an unforgettable year, and your business can be a part of the excitement. Put your brand front and center with thousands of loyal local sports fans. Contact Cache Valley Media Group today. Get your business in the game.
Welcome back to KVNU's For the People Spotlight on Logan Schools. We have here in the studio with us, and a listener is joking about this now, and I'm going to go ahead and confess to it. A listener via text said, it's so funny listening to you trying desperately to get local officials to say mean things about lawmakers. This is someone who knows me and also happens to be a state lawmaker. And
well, if you tell us which state lawmaker, we can say something mean about him.
Yeah, I'll own it, Casey. I'll own it.
Casey Snyder.
But no, it is here in the studio with us. Before we get too into this, we have Superintendent Frank Schofield and Logan Schools Business Administrator Jeff Barber. And Casey, what he's joking about there is a thing where I'm trying, you know, I try whenever we're talking about property taxes as it pertains to education, it is important to remember, I think, that one of the reasons this system is so complex and why you have these truth in taxation meetings that where what's being explained is a need to increase a levy of some kind. It literally does come from the fact that the state is trying to do the most it can on the smallest budget it can for education. And I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm saying, but you have to acknowledge that's the biggest contributor to the complexity of this. And there's an argument that it's a smart way to go about it, because other states who have tried more direct, easier, if you will, funding mechanisms, maybe they've had more money for schools, but then people do see much higher tax rates in certain aspects of their lives. So, again, a whole debate we can have over that another day. That's not the conversation we're having here today, but it is an important aspect to remember in this. And getting back into the discussion.
Can I add something to that real quick, Jason?
Please.
And just another illustration of both how difficult this is, but how it's motivated by really admirable motives. And another thing that the legislature in Utah has done consistently over time is made a very deliberate effort to increase the equity of funding across the state. Utah is an extremely diverse state in terms of, you know, rural, urban, or rural. That was horrible. Rural and urban.
I do the
urban and rural.
Everyone knows what you mean.
Urban and rural districts, and the needs are significantly different. You know, just in our neighboring district, Box Elder, you know, you have some schools that are extremely remote.
Sure.
And they're what the state recognizes, the legislature recognizes that those families still need a school.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be economical. It's going to cost more than it costs to run a school. It's going to cost more per pupil to have a school in a remote community than it does in an urban area. Just because you still have to have a building, you got to have heating and cooling, electrical and all that.
Oh, absolutely.
So the legislature has necessarily existent small schools, and that's a fund that is specifically for these rural communities that without this funding would not have an equitable opportunity to provide educational services to their children.
Sure.
The legislature looks at growth, recognizing that there are some areas of the state, and it can vary from year to year, will have significant increases in their number of students. So the legislature provides an additional pot of money to accommodate for that, you know, beyond the regular WPU.
Sure.
So there have been a number of efforts made by our legislature to promote equity in funding across schools. Now, let me clarify. I am the first to argue that it would be great if we had more funding for schools in Utah. There are a number of student needs that are very difficult to address without increases in funding.
Sure.
Because the best way to address those students' needs is through additional personnel. And that's the largest
Which
area.
costs money, right?
Yeah, that costs money. And it's the largest percentage of our expenditures as a district are to personnel, because most of the services kids need to promote their learning, their emotional well-being, activities like we've talked on this show about before, they all require people, and they require the right people.
Sure.
And that requires funding to hire and retain those people.
Yeah,
So,
competitive wages.
yeah,
are
competitive
definitely a part
wages
of that.
and providing the breadth of services that are required. You know, one thing that we're working on, and across the state, we've seen issues over the last several years since the pandemic in student behavior. That time away from school and then changes in routines and stuff. You know, we have a growing number of students, or we have had a growing number of students who really struggle behaviorally in school. And you want them to be in school because that's where they're going to learn, and that's where they have the best chance to develop the replacement behaviors that will actually promote their long-term success.
Sure.
But working with these kids who have behavioral challenges and helping them work through those challenges requires people. So we're looking at, all right, we see a need to have more people. This year, our board authorized the addition of more aides in our elementary schools, specifically to help with behavior. But that's something that if we're really going to address the ever-evolving needs of our students, there has to be funding to provide the programs and the people to address those needs. So
And is it fair
I
to
fully
say-
acknowledge everything the legislature has done to promote equity and work within a budget and be responsible, and they have done a truly admirable job with that.
Sure.
With that, I'll also always advocate for more money going to education so we can do more for kids.
Do you feel? I mean, this is sort of getting into crystal ball territory, but your experience, Frank, and yours, Jeff, if you'd like to chime in as well, as the valley grows, as population increases, it stands to reason, because we talk about this. In fact, with some of the tragic headlines in the news this week over the two fallen officers from the Tremont and Garland Police Department, there's a conversation that is now kind of playing out that as the valley grows, the needs and the job description basically of police changes a little bit. The same is true for school districts, right? As population grows, the needs grow, and sometimes the needs get more complex. To as a way to phrase it, do you feel statewide, from the legislative point of view, are we on top of that? Are we in a position to kind of grow and adapt when it comes to, specifically when it comes to funding? Or do we need to sit down and have a conversation about that as we grow?
I think we have a number of legislators who are extremely aware of the needs. And I have conversations with a few where the question is, okay, here are the needs right now. Instead of being in a position with a state education system where we're typically responding to needs, saying, okay, here are the needs that have appeared, how are we going to respond to them? Can we do more to look ahead and try to get ahead of the curve on the needs so we're ready for them when they come? And an element of that, your analogy is really apt, is crystal balling it. You're trying to say, okay, what do we think the needs are going to be? And we've got some good tools to predict those to a certain level.
Sure.
But there's always going to be a need on some level to just be quick to respond, be agile, and have the funding and the flexibility, the statutory ability to flex based on needs and respond quickly to students' needs as they show up.
Because in every district, every school is going to be different as well, right?
Yeah.
We've talked about that before.
Yeah, every district's going to have slightly different needs based on the character of their community. Schools are reflections of their community. So as the communities evolve, the schools are in a position where they have to evolve in a similar manner. So I think to answer your question, I think there are a lot of legislators who are very aware of the needs and are looking for ways to get out in front of them and meet those needs adequately.
Makes sense.
I think there are some challenges in Utah, in terms of generating revenue. We do have a large percentage of our land that is federally owned. That does create some challenges. It creates some amazing opportunities for recreation and national parks and conservation. It does require us to think about revenue generation through a different lens, because there's a lot of land that's not available. And I'm not sure we really want to try to use that land. That's a whole other political topic, whether we want to try to use national parks and protected lands as revenue generators.
Sure.
To the level that some others might discuss. But there are just complex issues that citizens, school boards, and legislators have to take into account when we're really trying to think how in a state as diverse as ours, with the strengths and the challenges that we face, how do we adequately fund an educational system that meets the needs of all kids?
That is because, this is maybe an extreme example, but not doing so means one day Mr. Jeff Barber, as a business administrator, comes to you, Frank, and says, all right, we don't have air conditioners in these schools, and we don't have money for air conditioners either, and school starts in a week. That happened in Idaho recently, a couple of years ago. That's the on the ground reality, right? You're planning to avoid that, but yet without the power to just say, here's how much we need, write us a check. I imagine that's a bit of a headache for you some days, Jeff, right?
Yeah, it is. There's always challenges, but I think, family budgets have the same challenges that we do, that they face. And what are the priorities with the funding that we have? And we've got, as long as I've been here, we really have had great boards that really focus on what are the needs and the challenges, and we spend a great deal of time discussing those and trying to figure out what is it that we really need and how are we going to meet those needs.
And that's the importance of keeping up on all of this. And then that, that's a great way to bring us back to the upcoming Truth in Taxation meeting that, let's see, August 28th. And I've posted a link on our Facebook page if you'd like to know more. That's the next one for here in Cache Valley. And of course, this is not just Cache Valley schools. This is Box Elder. There were areas along the Wasatch Front all the way to Salt Lake that are making similar plans to have these conversations with the public. And it's all part of literally paying for one of the most important things state, county, and even to some extent city, and of course school districts do, which is running the schools, making sure they are there and doing what we want them there for. So stick around. More of our guests here in the studio this hour for our Spotlight on Logan Schools, Superintendent Frank Schofield and Logan Schools Business Administrator Jeff Barber. More to come right after this.
News Talk 610 AM, 102.1 FM, KVNU.
This is Deputy Brad Nelson with the Cache County Sheriff's Office. Schools are back in session throughout the valley, which means kids are going to be out on the roads during the morning and afternoon commutes. Law enforcement will be patrolling school zones where the speed limits are 20 miles per hour. Also, watch out for crosswalks and crossing guards. We're asking citizens to be alert while driving and help us keep kids safe. Thank you.
Hi, it's Olivia Munn with my shelter pets, Frankie and Chance, reminding you that when you adopt a shelter pet, you discover all the things that make them unique. Adopt pure love at theshelterpetproject.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council, the Humane Society of the United States, and Maddie's Fund.
Welcome back to KVNU's For the People. Spotlight on Logan Schools underway here. Just about 5 minutes left in the show today, and Frank actually came up with a great question to wrap up to put Jeff right in the spotlight, and I like that. But the question was for business administrator at Logan Schools, Jeff Barber, if you could wave a magic wand and change anything to not just make your job easier, but the entire funding outlook of everything, what would it be? Yeah. That's
I would want to simplify.
Frank. I'm impressed.
We had a board member who was one of the owners of Cache Valley Bank and had spent his career in banking. And in many of the meetings that I give reports, he would say, "This is the most complicated financial system." And he said, private entities don't deal with this. Most public governments don't. The number of funding sources that we have, and they, each one of those has their own rules that we have to follow, and we have to make sure that the money follows that, and we get audited to make sure that, that we're following all of those rules, and it does get really complicated, and it would be really nice to have that streamlined and simplified so that there weren't quite as many funding sources, and yet, in order to try to get as much funding as we can, we're out trying to get federal grants. We're trying to, find other opportunities that will pay for the programs that we feel like we need, and so inevitably when you get that grant, it comes with its own strings attached and rules that we have to follow. But it does, as far as working through the finance, it makes it very, very complicated. And we have an accountant who's really good at doing that and keeping those funds where they should be, and he's a great help to me and to the district. But it's a constant frustration because it is a very complicated, school finance is a very complicated animal.
And in many cases, when back to the idea of multiple funding sources, many of those funding sources the districts have no say over. The money they decide to contribute is up to them, and it is. I mean, it's a very complicated system. As you said, Jeff, with the goal of kind of spreading this out so no one part of the system is overburdened, but definitely an argument for some simplification here and there. And but also I want to say this as maybe a note to wrap up on to both you, Frank, and you, Jeff, and everyone involved with not just Logan Schools, Cache School District, Box Elder, all of them, but everything we've just explained, ahead of this Truth and Taxation meeting next week, it kind of speaks to the ability of everyone to do a lot inside a very complex and oftentimes shoestring budget system. And yet the results out of our schools, especially Logan School District, are constantly impressive. Our graduation rates are high. Our test scores for what those still are factored in by the legislature at least are high. And the number of kids going on to college is consistently increasing. And then I think back over the last year, all of the things we've talked about that are being done at Logan Schools, that many resources for students, for parents, for teachers. It's really impressive to see how much gets done inside, as Jeff said, this complex system that a lot of times the school districts are the last ones to get to weigh in on how much money there's going to be. But so hats off to everyone in the district for that, because from the outside, it's a pretty impressive thing to see.
Absolutely. We have great teachers, great staff, and they just do amazing work, and we're seeing those results with our students.
Even Frank.
Right? Frank is
by.
Thank you again to our guests here in the studio. Again, Superintendent of Logan Schools, Frank Schofield, and Jeff Barber, a business administrator for the Logan School District. Thanks to our listeners for being here as well. Stick around. Dave Ramsey is next here on KVNU Logan.